Nostalgia is the sentimentality for the past, normally used for a specific time or a place a person has a happy association with. It came from a learned formation of a Greek compound consisting of nostos, meaning homecoming, and algos, meaning despair. Back in the 17th century, a medical student used it to describe the type of anxieties that were displayed by Swiss soldiers fighting away from home. It was described as a medical condition, a form of melancholy in the early modern period. This spanned across the period after the late Middle Ages of the post-classical era to the beginning of the Age of Revolution. For many centuries, doctors persisted in understanding nostalgia as the state of ill health requiring treatment. The views of its mechanisms and typology changed alongside the demographic of its affected over the years. In 2008, a paper from Professor Wilset Seedcase and colleagues note that throughout the 17th and 18th centuries, doctors thought nostalgia only affected the Swiss soldiers that had lent their service to foreign armies. Professor Svetlana Bum wrote alongside this that at this time, cures for nostalgia included leeches, warm hypnotic emulsions and opium, and the return to the Alps. In the early 19th century, physicians had begun to acknowledge it as a widespread condition seen as a form of melancholy. Then throughout the 20th century, doctors kept changing their minds about the nature of nostalgia. It was mostly associated with homesickness, which was seen as an unhelpful psychological mechanism experienced by students and immigrants unable to adapt to a new life away from home. Said in the 2008 paper, nostalgia was regarded as a psychiatric disorder. Symptoms included anxiety, sadness, and insomnia at the beginning of the 20th century. By the mid-20th century, psychodynamic approaches considered nostalgia a subconscious desire to return to an earlier life stage. It was called a repressive compulsive disorder. It then soon after was downgraded to a variant of depression marked by loss and grief. In their 2006 article, they also mentioned that for much of 20th century, some psychologists saw nostalgia as an immigrant psychosis, a repressive manifestation closely related to the issue of loss, incomplete mourning and depression. In the late 20th century, only then did people start differentiating between nostalgia and homesickness. This isn't in the script, but I'm going to butcher all of this, so I'm so sorry. Emotions have been seen as a strong eviction of nostalgia due to the processing of stimuli passing through amygdala, the emotional point of the brain, a stimulation of metabolic activity and blood flows in several regions of the brain, such as the frontal lobe, limbic, paralimbic, and midbrain. When the evocation of nostalgia happens, greater activity happens in the inferior frontal gyrus, substantia nigra, and cerebellum and insula of the brain, the reward center of the brain, such as the hippocampus, substantia nigra, ventral tegmental area, and ventral striatum are also affected during the nostalgic activity. Research on a past empirical investigation paper created by Alicia J. Steinberg-Mahon and Edward A. Roth that talks about what elicits music-evoked nostalgia using an EDA. I wanted to do something similar. I changed variables, group size, and altercation questions, and I didn't use an EDA machine. This is what I found out from the interviewers. Takes them back to a simpler time, such as their childhood, as it fills them with joy, reminding them of the stories they used to make up. The song to them is thought of as whimsical and magical, keeping them engaged and making them feel like they're slowly stepping into a magical world. Second saw it as a continuous tradition they've had since they were young, one they share with their father. Others share the sentiment of closeness with the parent as they listened to the songs on drives when they were little, while fourth would hear it when they played with their siblings when they were all younger. Fifth saw it as something that they would listen to when difficult things were happening, and it helped them let out all their stresses, and so they don't revisit that song now. Seen as a comfort show by sixth, one they'd watch after getting back from school, reminding them of where they used to live, bringing excitement to other, bringing back that closeness and childlike joy they had, reliving a time in their life. Finally, the last one found it had an epiphany-like effect to them, with how metaphorically it affected their nostalgia. I can see that nostalgia for sound seems to set in by the time they're a kid, and it carries on throughout their teenage years to adulthood, shaping them. Be it a different audio, everyone can share the social connection, your imagination running free, bittersweetness it holds to you, realisation of your past. This is something I feel everyone can sympathise with, as we are all more similar than we think.